Okay, Rag, I have a couple questions before I start leading my friends through this study. First one is, how would I go about inviting people?
Good question, Phil. What I would think about when I try to invite people, I'm usually trying to invite them, especially in our culture. My hook or my pull is for their growth, for their discovery, not for them to agree or become a Christian. My hook is, because we're friends, can you experience something with me? So I might say something like, hey, I got this new this Bible study. I might show them it. I'd say, hey, I got this. I'm thinking of doing it so I can learn more about the Bible. I'd love, would you like to do it with me? We've had a couple of good conversations, and I know you've got some questions. Would you like to kind of explore along with me? Mm-hmm. So there, I'm presuming there in that we've had a couple of conversations, and maybe not. I might say, I don't know if you ever thought about this, about Jesus. I know sometimes it's hard, in our culture to find some answers. Would you like to just explore this with me? Mm-hmm. And something like that I would use. And then sometimes I've had people say, well, I'm not a Christian, I don't believe. And I'd say, oh, well, that's even better, because I think I've heard that this book is designed for people who don't have that kind of background or belief system, just really to help understand some of the key things, what it's about. So that your contribution, your perspective would be really appreciated, because you come from a different perspective than I would have. Mm-hmm. So I would turn that objection right around and make it a plus, right?
Yeah. Cool. How long should each meeting be?
Good question. I think what you want to do is make them long enough so you can get somewhere without making it so long that you never want to come back again, because it will fill out my busy schedule. So I would suggest somewhere to half an hour to an hour. And the scenes are pretty short, right? So you can do a scene easily, I think, in half an hour. So maybe you're doing one or two scenes. And so, but what I think we want to do, though, is whether it's half hour or an hour, whatever you'd agree on, you stick to it. So if it's a half hour, you don't go an hour. Mm-hmm. So.
Cool. Where should we meet?
I always try to meet in a place that's comfortable for the people that I'm doing it with. So that might be at Tim Hortons. It might be in the sub at the campus. It might be in my apartment because they're comfortable there. It might be in their apartment. Those would be the 4 places I would think of, and there might be some other place, some lounge or something. We're close where they are and convenient for them, and where they're comfortable.
Okay. How would you go about reading it? Would you read it silently, or you read it all yourself, or read it as a group?
So you mean when we're actually in this discussion?
Yeah, so in the setting.
Well, what I would do, so here we are, I just opened it up, here we are in Act 2, Scene 3, and I would ask, I'd say, hey, do you want to take turns, maybe we'll read, just 3 or 4 of us, or even just 2 of us, and how about we try a paragraph each? So you'll see here, there's almost all of them, there's some intro material. So that would be a paragraph here, and then the next paragraph, and then each of the passages then are in paragraphs. So then we just keep going paragraph by paragraph through the scenes until we're done. So that's what my suggestion. I would ask. If someone's not comfortable, say, okay, well, you just listen, while the rest of us take turns reading.
Okay.
If you read it silently, you're not together as a group, so I would not go there.
Okay. Here's a good example you have. In Act 2, Scene 3, there are 2 different texts in the right column. Would you read both of them before moving into the column on the left? Or would you read the first one, go to the left, and then come back to the right?
Right. So in other words, read all the passages, like in the scene, actually there's 3. Good question. I would probably read, for example, Act 2, Scene 3, there's 2 paragraphs in Psalm 2. I would read those 2 paragraphs and just do my observation questions. So that's familiar. I wouldn't go into the interpretation or the conversion. Similarly with the Isaiah passage that follows, because these who, what, when, where, why questions are kind of related right to that passage. And so you do that. And then I would maybe do these semi-interpretation pattern recognition questions for all of them together.
Okay.
That's how I would look at doing it.
What if I wouldn't be able to find like a pattern or a keyword in the text?
Yeah, and some of them there aren't any. And this is standard. So what you're doing is you're helping people look for them, but they may not be there. So if you can't find any, don't flog it. Just okay. In this passage, I would say something. Do you guys see any patterns, repetitions? Because I don't, and they may not. And they may find some, and then okay. So let's move on.
Okay. do I try to answer the riddles, because the riddles are questions, do we try to sit there and answer the riddles before we move to conversion, or do they go together?
I think that the emphasis on all the riddles should be the puzzle of it, which to raise the curiosity rather than to get the answer right away. So that's what you want to do. And so you dance around the riddle a bit, you throw some ideas out, but then you say, well, maybe we'll get some ideas as we converge. And so then you go to the converging without having fully gone through the riddles.
Alright, what if they don't see Jesus as the answer to the riddle?
Well, I think you can look at that in two ways. One is they may not understand it. It's just too much for them. So a good example would be, all nations will be blessed through you. Well, they don't get it. So then I just say, hey, we may not know, let's just keep moving on. Another thing different than that might be, oh, I don't believe that that's Jesus, I think it's something else. And so there was a disagreement in a sense, and I would say, oh, okay, that's a possible way to look at it. Maybe it isn't Jesus, maybe it's the branch is referring to someone else. Fair enough. But let's just keep moving. Again, I would just encourage them to keep moving, because maybe we're in the overall schemes to see. I wouldn't really get bogged down and having to agree with me on every point. Sometimes I've shared, well, this is from my perspective, I see it this way, and how's yours? And they would share theirs, and it's maybe different. That's fine.
Okay. What if they have questions that aren't addressed in this book?
I think what I do is I'm trying to help them. So if I think their questions are helpful, and not too much of a rabbit trail, and it depends, if I got a group of 5 people and one guy's got questions that the other 4 don't, then I might say, hey, maybe we can talk about that after. So I'll try to come back to this. I'll always try to move it back, but I'm not going to force it. If they're really there, I'll spend some, and if I think it's helpful. If they're just asking questions to avoid trying to be obstinate, then I wouldn't really try to answer those questions. Say, listen, those are good questions, but maybe we can ask them another day. That's how I would generally go about it.
All right, thanks. I think I feel ready to do this.
One more thing, though, just in case, on the questions, just in case they got objections, right? I never argue with them when there's an objection, like I don't agree with you, whatever. Some of their objections could be, well, how do you know let's say, for example, how do you know the Bible hasn't been changed to twist it? I would often then refer them, so like, here, how do you know the Bible hasn't changed? So I'd give them this, and say, here's something that gives you a perspective on it. And then you can find this on the Consider the Gospel website, and others that relate to those kind of things. So then I often will give them a little something to think about that they can take away and reflect on. So,
okay. Thanks.
So you're ready to go? Let's go do it. And I think also the other thing is, bathe this whole thing in prayer. Ask God to lead you, guide you, and He will do that.
Indeed.